Before we begin this journey of understanding and transformation, take a slow breath and allow yourself to settle into the moment. You're about to step into a space where productivity becomes simple, where clarity replaces overwhelm, and where you begin to see your potential with new eyes. This isn't just another summary, it's an experience, a shift, a gentle awakening. Welcome to Book Navigator, where every book becomes a doorway, and every insight becomes a guide toward a better, more intentional version of yourself. Today we explore the powerful simplicity hidden inside. WorkSimply by Carson Tate, a book that doesn't just teach you how to work better, but how to understand yourself better. So open your mind, soften your expectations, and let the journey unfold. The biggest truth hidden beneath all the noise is this. Most people aren't struggling because they lack motivation. They're struggling because they're trying to work in ways that don't fit who they are. It's like trying to write with your non-dominant hand. Possible, yes, but painfully slow, endlessly frustrating and never natural. And the more you force yourself to follow methods that don't match your thinking style, your personality, or your natural rhythm, the more disconnected you feel from your own potential. You start believing something is wrong with you, when in reality, something is wrong with the method. Imagine someone handing you a map to success, but the map is designed for a completely different landscape. You keep trying to follow it, but every turn feels wrong, every step feels forced, and every outcome feels distant. That's how most productivity advice works. Generic, rigid, one size fits all. It may have worked for the person who created it, but it wasn't created for you. And that is where the frustration begins. But the moment you learn to understand how your mind naturally operates when you work best, how you organize, how you think, how you focus, that moment becomes a turning point. Productivity stops being a burden. It becomes intuitive. It becomes aligned. It becomes something that flows from you instead of something you chase. This is why Carson Tate begins with a single, powerful reminder. You are not broken, you are unique. The way your brain processes information, the way your thoughts move, the way your attention flows, all of it is uniquely wired. And the moment you start honoring that wiring, everything becomes easier. Think of a child in school who keeps getting scolded for not sitting still, when in reality, that child learns best through movement. No matter how hard the child tries, sitting quietly for hours will never feel natural, and it doesn't have to. The issue isn't the child. The issue is the mismatch between the environment and the brain. Adults experience the same problem, just in quieter, hidden ways. We force ourselves to fit into systems that drain us. We copy routines that exhaust us. We chase methods that don't match our minds. Adults experience the same problem, just in quieter, hidden ways. We force ourselves to fit into systems that drain us. We copy routines that exhaust us. We chase methods that don't match our minds. And slowly, without realizing it, we drift further and further away from our natural strengths. But when you finally learn to align your work with your nature, your real nature, suddenly productivity stops being a battle. It becomes a partnership. It becomes a rhythm. It becomes something that moves with you instead of against you. And slowly, without realizing it, we drift further and further away from our natural strengths. But when you finally learn to align your work with your nature, your real nature, suddenly productivity stops being a battle. It becomes a partnership. It becomes a rhythm. It becomes something that moves with you instead of against you. You stop fighting yourself. You stop doubting yourself. You stop blaming yourself. And for the first time in a long time, you begin to feel capable again. Carson Tate explains that real productivity begins the moment you recognize your productivity style, the natural pattern your mind follows when you think, plan, create, and solve problems. And once you understand this pattern, you stop forcing yourself into methods that were never meant for you. Instead, you begin crafting a way of working that feels effortless, almost instinctive. Imagine trying to play a musical instrument you've never learned. Every note feels like a struggle. But when you switch to the instrument your hands naturally understand, the music flows. Productivity is the same. When you work against your wiring, everything feels heavy. But when you work with your nature, momentum becomes automatic. This is why people often feel relief when they finally understand their style. It's like discovering a secret code that explains your habits, your strengths, your frustrations, and even your procrastination. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What works for me?" That shift is life-changing, because now your approach to work isn't random. It's personalized. You plan differently. You prioritize differently. You communicate differently. You take action in ways that feel natural instead of forced. You stop wasting time on systems that overwhelm you, and you start choosing methods that actually make sense for your brain. It's not about changing who you are. It's about using who you are correctly. Carson Tate identifies 4 powerful productivity styles: the prioritizer, the planner, the arranger, and the visualizer. And the moment you hear these names, something inside you begins to awaken, because suddenly, productivity doesn't feel like a universal rulebook anymore. It feels personal, human, real. Each style reflects a different way of thinking, a different way of approaching tasks, and a different way of making sense of the world. And as you begin exploring these styles, it becomes clear why certain methods energize you while others feel suffocating. It's not about discipline. It's about design. The prioritizer thrives on logic and efficiency, cutting straight to the point without getting lost in details. The planner feels alive when following structure, lists, timelines, and clear steps. The arranger, empathetic, intuitive, works best through connection, collaboration, and understanding people. And then there's the visualizer, the dreamer, the innovator, the one who sees possibilities before anyone else can. And when you finally discover which one resonates with you, it feels like someone has held up a mirror to your inner world. Everything begins to make sense. The way you organize, the way you get distracted, the way you communicate, the way you think. You start to understand why certain tasks drain you, while others ignite your creativity. It's like unlocking a hidden doorway inside your mind, a doorway that leads to clarity, self-acceptance, and ease. Instead of forcing productivity, you begin experiencing it naturally, effortlessly, authentically. And this understanding becomes even more powerful when you realize that no style is better or more productive than another. Each one carries a unique intelligence, a unique rhythm, a unique strength that, when honored, can transform the way you work. The problem is that most people spend their entire lives trying to operate from a style that isn't their own. A prioritizer might force themselves into detailed planning and burnout. A planner might try to work with spontaneous bursts of creativity and feel lost. An arranger may suppress their relational strength in isolated environments. And a visualizer might try to fit into rigid systems that suffocate their imagination. You can almost feel the exhaustion in that mismatch, like wearing shoes 2 sizes too small and wondering why every step hurts. But the moment you step into the style that truly belongs to you, everything shifts. You begin working with ease, with clarity, with a sense of natural flow that feels almost liberating. Tasks that once felt heavy now feel manageable. Projects that overwhelmed you now feel exciting. Even the simplest parts of your day begin to carry a sense of harmony. It's like finding a workspace that finally fits your body, a desk at the right height, a chair that supports you, a room filled with the right light. Nothing has changed externally, yet everything feels different internally. And that inner difference becomes the foundation of sustainable productivity. And once you recognize your true productivity style, the entire way you approach your day begins to change. You stop copying other people's routines and start designing your own. You stop feeling guilty about not fitting into a system that was never meant for you. Instead, you allow your natural rhythm to guide your decisions. If you're a prioritizer, you finally realize why clear outcomes energize you more than long meetings. If you're a planner, you understand why structure brings you peace instead of pressure. If you're an arranger, you stop questioning why collaboration motivates you so deeply. And if you're a visualizer, you learn to trust those spontaneous sparks of insight that others may overlook. It's as if you've finally taken your mind off default settings and switched it to optimized mode, customized for your nature. This self-awareness feels like a gentle liberation. You begin to feel less resistance in your tasks. You make decisions faster. You understand your triggers, what distracts you, what motivates you, what slows you down, what pulls you forward. You start building habits that actually work for you instead of fighting against your own psychology. And slowly you begin to feel something powerful. Control. Not the controlling, stressful kind, but the kind that comes from clarity. The kind that allows you to move through your day with intention instead of confusion. You're no longer trying to force productivity. You're allowing it to flow through you in a way that feels genuine, natural, and deeply aligned with who you are. And as this clarity deepens, you begin to understand something even more profound. Productivity isn't just about how you work. It's about how you live. The choices you make, the energy you carry, the habits you build, the thoughts you entertain, all of them shape your daily experience. When you operate from a style that aligns with who you are, your entire life begins to feel more cohesive. Suddenly, your mornings don't feel rushed. Your tasks don't feel like weights dragging you down. Your evenings don't end in exhaustion or frustration. Instead, there's a sense of balance, a sense of flow, a sense of being in harmony with yourself. It feels like the scattered pieces of your life begin falling into place. Not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you show up in the world. You begin setting boundaries more naturally because you finally understand your limits. You start saying no to things that disrupt your rhythm and yes, to things that nourish your mind. You prioritize not out of pressure, but out of clarity. You communicate with others in a way that reduces stress instead of adding to it. And the best part? You stop feeling guilty for being yourself. You stop apologizing for the way your mind works. You stop comparing your path to someone else's. You embrace your strengths with confidence and your weaknesses with awareness. You stop forcing yourself into boxes that don't fit and instead build a life that expands with you. This is the moment when productivity stops being a struggle and becomes a lifestyle. And as you step deeper into this lifestyle of alignment, you begin to notice subtle shifts in every corner of your life. Shifts that feel small at first, but carry incredible power. Your mind feels clearer. Your decisions feel lighter. Your tasks feel more achievable, not because they changed, but because your relationship with them changed. You're no longer approaching your day with a sense of dread or pressure. You're moving with intention, responding instead of reacting, choosing instead of drifting. Even the way you sit at your desk feels different. There's a newfound ease in your posture, a quiet confidence in your breath, a calmness in your thoughts. You're not rushing. You're not forcing. You're not chasing. You're moving with a rhythm that finally feels like yours. And this inner shift begins affecting the people around you as well. They notice your presence becoming steadier, your communication becoming clearer, your energy becoming grounded. You're no longer the person who's constantly stressed, overwhelmed, or stretched thin. You're becoming someone who knows how to manage themselves before managing anything else. Someone who doesn't crumble under pressure because they understand their own boundaries. Someone who doesn't lose focus because they know what actually matters. You're building emotional space around your work, the kind of space that protects your clarity, your creativity, your peace. And through this, you begin to realize that productivity isn't measured by how much you do, but by how present you are while doing it. That presence becomes your advantage, your anchor, your quiet strength. And as this awareness strengthens, you begin to redefine what success truly means to you. It's no longer about checking off 100 tasks in a day or constantly running toward the next milestone. It's about how peacefully and purposefully you move through your day. It's about the energy you bring to your work, the presence you bring to your relationships, the calmness you bring to your decisions. Success stops being something you chase. It becomes something you embody. You realize that efficiency doesn't mean speed. It means clarity. It means doing the right things for the right reasons in the right way. And that, Carson Tate explains, is the essence of working simply. Not doing less, but doing what truly matters most. You begin to experience a rare kind of freedom, the freedom of focus. You no longer feel pulled in 10 directions by competing priorities. You no longer drown in endless to-do lists that steal your peace of mind. You've learned to identify the few things that create the biggest impact and to give your best energy to them. And in doing so, your work begins to reflect not just effort, but excellence. It becomes intentional, meaningful, and satisfying. Each task, no matter how small, begins to hold a sense of purpose. You end your days not with exhaustion, but with quiet fulfillment, knowing that what you did mattered, not because it was a lot, but because it was aligned. And as this alignment settles deeper into your everyday life, you begin to appreciate the beauty of simplicity in a world that glorifies complexity. You start seeing how much mental clutter you carried, not because you wanted to, but because you believed you had to. You believed productivity meant running faster, adding more steps, juggling more tasks, and constantly pushing yourself to the edge. But now you see how exhausting that approach truly was. Simplicity doesn't limit you. It frees you. It removes the noise, the confusion, the unnecessary pressure. It sharpens your perspective and makes room for what truly matters. You begin to understand that your time, your energy, and your attention are not unlimited resources. They are investments. And every investment must be made with intention. You start noticing how often you said yes to things that drained you and no to things that could have helped you grow. You realize how many times you overloaded your schedule out of fear, not wanting to disappoint others, not wanting to seem incapable, not wanting to fall behind. But as you step into simplicity, you begin choosing differently. You choose what aligns with your strengths. You choose what brings clarity instead of chaos. You choose what supports your growth instead of sabotaging it. And with every conscious choice, your life becomes lighter. You feel more focused, more grounded, more present. You feel as if you've finally taken back the steering wheel of your own mind. And as you continue simplifying your work and your life, you begin to notice a powerful pattern. Simplicity breeds clarity, and clarity breeds confidence. The less cluttered your mind becomes, the stronger your focus grows. You start trusting yourself more. You stop second-guessing every decision because your direction feels clean, light, and purposeful. Every task you choose to do fits into a bigger vision now. It has meaning. You're no longer busy just to feel productive. You're deliberate because you understand that doing everything doesn't mean achieving more. In fact, doing less but doing it well brings far greater peace and results. And with this realization, you start building your days differently. You begin structuring your time in ways that protect your energy rather than deplete it. Carson Tate reminds us that productivity isn't about squeezing every second of your schedule. It's about creating space for your mind to think, breathe, and create. That's where real innovation comes from, the quiet moments between effort. So you start allowing pauses in your day. You take a walk without your phone. You sit with a cup of coffee and just breathe. You finish a project and give yourself permission to rest without guilt. And in those moments of rest, ideas begin to appear effortlessly. Insights, clarity, solutions that once felt out of reach. You start understanding that rest isn't the opposite of work. It's the fuel that makes meaningful work possible. And as you embrace this rhythm of purposeful action and intentional rest, you begin to experience a transformation you didn't even know you were yearning for. A transformation in your relationship with time itself. Time no longer feels like an enemy constantly running ahead of you. It becomes a partner, moving with you instead of against you. You stop feeling like you're always behind, always catching up, always racing to meet some invisible deadline. Instead, your days start to carry a steady, grounded pace that feels both productive and humane. This shift is subtle but life-changing. When you're not at war with time, you gain the ability to truly live inside each moment instead of rushing through it. You start noticing things you once ignored. The quiet satisfaction of finishing a task with your full attention. The calm that comes from knowing exactly what matters today. The relief of not juggling 10 things at once. You begin appreciating the natural flow of your own energy. Some moments call for focus. Others call for reflection. Some call for creativity. And some call for stillness. You stop forcing all moments to feel the same. You stop expecting yourself to be a machine. You stop running your day on guilt or pressure. Instead, you operate from awareness, understanding your internal cues, honoring your natural cycles, and respecting your emotional capacity. And through this awareness, time begins to feel expansive rather than scarce. It stretches with you. It supports you. It becomes a space where your best work can finally breathe. And as this healthier relationship with time deepens, you begin to recognize something even more empowering. You no longer measure your worth by your productivity. For so long, society has trained us to believe that the more we do, the more valuable we are. That if we're not constantly working, constantly hustling, constantly ticking boxes, we're somehow falling behind. But in this new space of simplicity and alignment, you begin to detach from that outdated belief. You realize that your value doesn't come from how busy you are, but from how intentionally you live. You understand that rest doesn't make you weak, and slowness doesn't make you unambitious. In fact, the people who achieve the most meaningful success are often the ones who create space for clarity, creativity, and self-awareness. You begin to appreciate that your best ideas rarely come when you're rushing. They come when your mind is calm. They come when your heart is present. They come when you're connected to yourself rather than drowning in noise. And this understanding becomes a powerful shift in your identity. You stop chasing productivity for the sake of appearance. You stop working from a place of fear or insecurity. Instead, you work from a place of purpose. Because every action you take now feels aligned with your goals, your values, and the future you're building. And this alignment brings a kind of peace that's rare in today's world. A peace that says, I don't have to prove anything. I just have to live intentionally. A peace that allows you to show up fully, without the heaviness of constant pressure. A peace that reminds you that you are not defined by your output. You are defined by your growth, your clarity, and your presence. As this sense of inner peace grows, you begin to understand that productivity isn't just about tools or techniques. It's about self-awareness. It's about knowing what fuels you and what drains you, what excites you and what overwhelms you, what helps you grow and what holds you back. This awareness becomes the foundation of everything you do. It guides your choices, shapes your habits, and influences the way you move through your day. You begin designing your work not around pressure, but around your natural energy. You give yourself permission to slow down when needed and speed up when inspired. You stop shaming yourself for how your mind works and instead learn to work with it, not against it. With this awareness, your workflow begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a collaboration, a partnership between your mind and your goals. You understand the moments when your focus is naturally high, and you use them wisely. You recognize the moments when your energy dips, and instead of fighting through them, you protect yourself with rest or lighter tasks. You start arranging your environment to support your productivity, whether that means creating a quiet space, setting up a clean desk, or simply removing the distractions that once derailed you. These small changes add up. They create a workday that feels balanced, aligned, and deeply fulfilling. You stop living on autopilot and start living with intention. And through this intentionality, your productivity becomes not just effective, but sustainable. And as this intentional way of working becomes your new normal, you start seeing how deeply your environment influences your productivity. It's not just about your mindset. It's about the space you create around yourself. You notice how clutter pulls your attention away, how noise interrupts your thoughts, how a messy desk affects your mental clarity. You realize that the environment you choose either supports your focus or slowly drains it. Carson Tate emphasizes that your physical space is not just a backdrop to your work. It's a partner in your productivity. The way your room feels, the way your tools are arranged, the way your surroundings support your energy. All of it matters more than most people ever realize. So you begin to shape your space intentionally. You remove the items that distract you. You place your most important tools within reach. You set up lighting that keeps you alert, not exhausted. You create a space that feels calm, organized, and aligned with the kind of person you want to be. And as this environment shifts, your behavior shifts with it. You sit with more focus. You think with more clarity. You work with more flow. Your mind feels less scattered, more centered. What once felt chaotic now feels peaceful. And that peace directly fuels your productivity. You realize that your environment isn't separate from your goals. It's the foundation that supports them. And as your inner world and outer world begin to align, something remarkable happens. Tasks that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable, almost effortless. You start experiencing the powerful truth that productivity isn't about pushing harder. It's about removing the barriers that once slowed you down. When your mind is clear, your space is supportive, and your workflow matches your natural style, even the most challenging work feels lighter. You stop postponing tasks out of fear or confusion. You stop procrastinating because you finally understand what triggers your avoidance. Instead, you begin approaching each task with a sense of calm determination, knowing you have both the clarity and the structure to see it through. This shift changes the way you show up for yourself. You stop viewing productivity as a test you must pass and start seeing it as a partnership with your potential. You understand that every task is simply a step, not a mountain. Every project is a journey, not a burden. And every moment of focus is a chance to honor the future you're building. The small wins begin to feel meaningful. Completing a task with full presence brings a quiet joy. Organizing your day based on your strengths brings confidence. Even the act of starting something you once avoided, becomes a victory in itself. You no longer rely on motivation alone. You rely on understanding, structure, and self-respect. And that combination becomes unstoppable. And as you continue to build this new relationship with your work, you start noticing that your emotional energy plays a far bigger role in productivity than you ever realized. It's not just about managing time, it's about managing yourself. You begin to understand the signals your body and mind send you. The tension that appears when you're overwhelmed, the heaviness that sits in your chest when you're overcommitted, the restlessness that arises when you're working out of alignment. Instead of ignoring these signals, you start listening. You start responding with care instead of criticism. This emotional awareness becomes a powerful guide. It helps you notice when you need a break, when you need support, when a task requires more focus, or when it's time to step away and reset. You stop pushing yourself to the point of burnout because you finally respect your limits. You learn that productivity is not about squeezing more out of yourself. It's about supporting yourself in a way that allows your best work to emerge naturally. You begin practicing emotional check-ins throughout the day, tiny moments where you pause and ask yourself, how am I feeling? What do I need right now? These questions become your anchor. They ground you. They bring you back into your body when your mind begins to spiral. And with each check-in, you create emotional space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to choose. This emotional space is what transforms your work from frantic to focused, from chaotic to intentional. You begin performing not from pressure but from clarity, not from stress but from presence. Your productivity becomes deeply connected to your emotional well-being. And when your emotions are acknowledged, supported, and understood, your work flows with a smoothness you once believed was impossible. And as this emotional clarity grows, you begin to recognize how interconnected your well-being and your productivity truly are. You can no longer separate the two, because every moment of stress, every wave of anxiety, every spark of inspiration, every drop of confidence, all of it shapes the quality of your work. You start noticing patterns, how your mind slows down when you're overwhelmed, how your creativity blossoms when you feel safe, how your discipline strengthens when your heart is at peace. You realize that emotions aren't interruptions to productivity. They are signals, guides, and sometimes even catalysts. Instead of pushing through them blindly, you begin honoring them as part of the process. This changes the way you approach challenges. Instead of collapsing under pressure, you pause and recognize what emotion is driving your reaction. Is it fear? Is it confusion? Is it frustration? And as you gain this clarity, you reclaim control over how you respond. You stop letting temporary emotions dictate permanent decisions. You breathe, you observe, you adjust, you move forward with intention instead of impulse. It feels like you're finally sitting in the driver's seat of your own mind, instead of letting stress take the wheel. And this emotional intelligence becomes one of your greatest strengths. You find yourself becoming more patient with your own process. You celebrate small progress instead of punishing yourself for not being perfect. You treat yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a friend. And through this compassion, your productivity becomes lighter, more human, more sustainable. You no longer approach your goals with a tense grip. Instead, you move toward them with steady, grounded confidence. This emotional alignment becomes the heartbeat of your productivity, the quiet rhythm that keeps you moving forward, one balanced, intentional step at a time. And as you deepen this emotional intelligence, you begin to realize that productivity is not a constant state. It's a rhythm, a natural ebb and flow. Some days your energy rises like a wave, lifting you into deep focus, clarity, and inspired action. Other days your mind feels quieter, slower, and more reflective. And instead of fighting these fluctuations, you begin to honor them. You stop expecting yourself to operate at the same intensity every day. You stop judging yourself for needing rest or slower moments. You stop believing the myth that productivity means being on all the time. Because now, you see that real productivity is about moving with your internal rhythm, not forcing against it. You begin structuring your days with intention, reserving your most demanding work for the hours when your energy peaks, and allowing gentler tasks for the times when your mind naturally slows down. You start recognizing that your body and mind have their own wisdom, their own timing, their own flow. And the moment you align with that flow, the friction disappears. Work becomes smoother. Ideas come more freely. Your decisions feel grounded instead of rushed. You begin achieving more with less effort because you're no longer battling your biology, you're partnering with it. And this partnership transforms your sense of self. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles to focus or can't stay consistent. You realize you were simply working against your rhythm for years. Once you align with it, consistency becomes easier. Focus becomes natural. Motivation becomes steady. You begin trusting your process, trusting your timing, trusting your own internal voice. And that trust becomes the quiet foundation that allows you to grow without burnout, create without pressure, and move toward your goals with genuine confidence rather than forced effort. As this trust in your natural rhythm strengthens, you begin noticing something powerful happening inside you. You're no longer driven by urgency. You're no longer haunted by the feeling that you must rush, must hurry, must constantly be ahead. Instead, you begin moving with intention. There is a calm confidence in your steps now, a belief that what needs to be done will be done. As long as you remain aligned, aware, and present, you stop letting panic dictate your choices. You stop letting guilt push you into meaningless busyness. You stop letting deadlines define your worth. When urgency loses its grip on you, clarity takes its place. And in that clarity, every decision becomes simpler. You begin understanding that rushing is often a symptom of fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But when you step into alignment, that fear loses its power. You no longer work from a place of scarcity or insecurity. You work from a place of purpose. You begin pacing yourself, not because you're slow, but because you're wise. You understand that doing something well requires presence, not panic. And in this state of calm, you actually accomplish more than you ever did in your rushed, chaotic past. Your mind feels spacious. Your thoughts feel organized. Your actions feel intentional. Even your breathing becomes deeper and more grounded. You begin valuing patience, not as waiting passively, but as the strength to move steadily and deliberately toward your goals. You realize that the most impactful work is often done quietly, consistently, and with a calm heart. And in that calmness, you discover a version of yourself that is powerful, capable, and deeply in control. Not because you force productivity, but because you understand it. And as calm intention replaces urgency in your life, you begin recognizing another truth. Productivity is not just about what you start. It's also about what you stop. You begin to understand that pruning your life, removing what no longer serves you, is just as important as adding new habits. You notice the tasks that drain your energy without adding value. You notice the commitments you made out of guilt rather than genuine desire. You notice the habits that steal your focus, the distractions that fracture your attention, the patterns that pull you off your path. And with newfound clarity, you begin letting them go, one by one. This letting go feels like clearing out a cluttered room. Each time you release something unnecessary, an outdated responsibility, a time-wasting habit, a toxic expectation, you create space for something better to enter. Space for clarity, space for creativity, space for rest, space for growth. And gradually your life becomes lighter, simpler, more aligned. You no longer carry the emotional weight of obligations that don't belong to you. You no longer say yes when your mind and body are begging for no. You stop performing for approval and start showing up for yourself. With every unnecessary layer you remove, your authentic self becomes more visible. You begin to understand what truly matters to you. You begin to prioritize from your heart, not from pressure. And that authenticity becomes your compass. It guides your work. It guides your time. It guides your relationships. It guides your decisions. You start choosing not based on convenience or habit, but based on alignment. And through that alignment, your productivity becomes cleaner, clearer, and more meaningful. It becomes less about doing everything, and more about doing the right things. And as you continue removing what no longer serves you, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start reclaiming your power. For years, you may have given pieces of that power away without even noticing it. You gave it away to other people's expectations. You gave it away to outdated routines. You gave it away to distractions that pulled you off course. You gave it away to guilt, to habits that drained you, to tasks that didn't align with the person you were becoming. But now, as you clear your space, both internally and externally, that power begins flowing back to you. It returns in your focus. It returns in your confidence. It returns in the way you choose your day instead of letting your day choose you. With each intentional decision, you start feeling like the author of your life again. You're no longer reacting to everything around you. You're directing the energy of your day. You're no longer scattered or unclear. You're steady and purposeful. And this sense of ownership changes everything. You stop seeing yourself as someone who's constantly trying to catch up. Instead, you see yourself as someone who is building, shaping, designing a life that reflects your truth. Every task becomes a choice, not an obligation. Every action becomes an investment, not a burden. Every moment becomes meaningful because you are present for it. And this regained power isn't loud or forceful. It's quiet, calm, rooted. It shows up in the way you set boundaries without guilt. It shows up in the way you protect your time with grace instead of apology. It shows up in the way you speak to yourself with respect instead of criticism. It shows up in the way you make decisions with clarity instead of doubt. You are becoming someone who doesn't just manage life. You shape it intentionally. You lead it with awareness. You live it with purpose. And that kind of power? It changes the way you experience everything. And as this quiet inner power settles into your daily life, you begin noticing a transformation not just in how you work, but in how you feel about your work. Tasks that once felt heavy now feel purposeful. Decisions that once confused you now feel clearer. Projects that once drained you now feel energizing because you're approaching them from a place of strength rather than pressure. You start showing up differently, with more intention, more presence, more emotional steadiness, even on challenging days. You don't collapse into frustration the way you once might have. Instead, you ask yourself honest questions. What does this moment need? What do I need? How can I approach this without losing myself? And these questions act like a compass, guiding you back to your center every single time. This shift affects the people around you too. They sense your grounded energy, your calm confidence, your ability to stay steady even when things get chaotic. You become someone others rely on, not because you're doing more than everyone else, but because you're showing up with clarity and emotional maturity. You communicate honestly. You set expectations clearly. You manage your boundaries with grace. And in doing so, you create a ripple effect of calmness in your environment. Productivity is no longer something you chase or struggle for. It becomes a natural expression of who you are becoming. And the more aligned you feel inside, the more effortlessly your outer world begins to organize itself around your values and priorities. Slowly you realize that this journey hasn't just improved your workflow. It has strengthened your identity. You're becoming someone who trusts themselves, someone who honors their capacity, someone who listens to their intuition, someone who refuses to sacrifice their peace for the illusion of productivity. And in that self-trust, you unlock a deeper level of potential that was always within you, waiting for the moment when you chose yourself fully. And as this strengthened identity becomes a steady part of your life, you start to see productivity not as a destination, but as a reflection of inner alignment. The more you understand yourself, the easier everything becomes. You begin trusting your instincts without overthinking them. You stop judging your pace and start honoring your natural rhythm. You no longer drown in the noise of unrealistic expectations. Instead, you move with a quiet certainty that you are exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. This certainty doesn't make you rigid. It makes you stable. It anchors you in a world that constantly tries to pull you away from your center. With this inner stability, your work no longer feels like a battlefield. It feels like a craft. You're able to focus deeply, not because you force yourself to, but because your mind feels calm enough to stay present. You handle complexity not with panic, but with clarity. You approach deadlines with strategy instead of fear. You create with confidence instead of self-doubt. Even when a challenge arises, you don't shrink back. You breathe, regroup, and step forward again, because you've built a foundation strong enough to hold you. And slowly, you start noticing something magical. Your work begins to reflect the best parts of you. Your patience shows up in your planning. Your creativity shows up in your ideas. Your discipline shows up in your follow-through. Your heart shows up in your communication. Your awareness shows up in your boundaries. This is when productivity becomes something deeper, not just task completion, but self-expression. Your work becomes a reflection of your growth, your maturity, and your evolving wisdom. You're not just getting things done. You're becoming someone capable of doing meaningful things with intention, calmness, and clarity. This is the real transformation Carson Tate points toward. A shift not in your workload, but in your identity. And as this deeper identity begins to shine through your work, you realize something profound. The most powerful productivity tool you will ever possess is self-understanding. Not apps, not planners, not complex systems, but the clarity of knowing who you are, how you think, what energizes you, what drains you, and what truly matters in your life. This awareness becomes the lens through which you make every decision. You begin asking yourself questions that cut through confusion. Does this align with my goals? Does this support my energy? Does this move me forward or hold me back? And slowly, these questions reshape your entire relationship with work. You begin noticing that when you operate from alignment, your output becomes smoother, your ideas become sharper, and your focus becomes stronger. You no longer feel the pressure to mimic someone else's method, because you finally trust your own. You stop forcing yourself into routines that suffocate you. Instead, you choose the routines that make your mind feel alive and capable. This shift is subtle but powerful. It transforms your productivity from mechanical effort to intuitive flow. You no longer feel like you're dragging yourself through your tasks. Instead, you feel guided, supported, and empowered by a system built around you. And this empowerment spills into the small, everyday moments. You set your workspace intentionally. You start your day with clarity instead of chaos. You approach challenges with steadiness instead of panic. You stop abandoning yourself when things get difficult. You stay present. You stay patient. You stay aligned. It feels like you're finally living in partnership with your own mind, instead of fighting it every step of the way. And when you work with yourself rather than against yourself, everything opens up. And as this partnership with your own mind deepens, you start to experience work in a completely new way. Tasks no longer feel like battles you must win. Instead, they feel like conversations, gentle exchanges between your goals and your inner world. You begin approaching each task not with dread, but with curiosity. How can I make this simpler? How can I make this meaningful? How can I do this in a way that honors who I am? And with every small shift, your work becomes more humane, more aligned, more connected to the life you actually want to live. You realize that productivity isn't about squeezing the most out of your day. It's about creating space for what truly matters. And in this spaciousness, you find an unexpected gift, joy. A quiet joy that comes from feeling capable, grounded, and in control of your path. You start enjoying the process again. You take pride in your progress. You notice the beauty in the small, steady steps. You begin appreciating your efforts rather than criticizing your shortcomings. Even the act of sitting down to work feels different now. There's less friction, less resistance, less self-doubt. There's a sense of trust. Trust that you can handle what comes. Trust that you can navigate challenges. Trust that you can build a life that reflects your deepest values. This joy becomes the fuel that keeps you moving. Not the frantic, adrenaline-filled motivation that burns out quickly, but a gentle, steady motivation that lasts. The kind that makes you want to show up for yourself again and again because it feels good, not because you're afraid of falling behind. And as this joy settles into your routine, you begin to understand something profound. Productivity is not just about what you produce. It's about who you become in the process. And you are becoming someone stronger, wiser, calmer, and more aligned than you ever imagined. And as this deeper, steadier joy becomes part of your everyday experience, you begin to realize something truly transformative. Productivity is no longer something you chase. It's something you create from within. It's no longer a reaction to pressure. It's an extension of your clarity. Slowly, you begin trusting the pace at which your life is unfolding. You no longer panic when things take time, because you understand that real growth is not rushed. You no longer doubt yourself when challenges arise, because you've learned to meet them with calm awareness. You no longer pressure yourself to match someone else's speed, because you finally see that your journey has its own rhythm, its own timing, its own wisdom. Each day feels more intentional. You wake up with direction, not confusion. You work with presence, not fear. You rest with permission, not guilt. This balance, this beautiful harmony between effort and ease, becomes your new normal, and people begin to notice the difference. They see the steadiness in your actions, the confidence in your decisions, the peace in your demeanor. They may even ask what changed, but the truth is, the change happened quietly inside you, long before it showed up outside. You've stopped fighting yourself. You've stopped doubting your path. You've stopped forcing productivity as a performance. Instead, you've learned to live with intention, to work from a place of inner alignment. And because of that, you no longer feel pulled in 1,000 different directions. You move with clarity. You choose with purpose. You show up with a grounded sense of who you are and where you're going. That inner alignment becomes your compass, guiding you gently but powerfully toward the life you're building, one thoughtful, centered decision at a time. And as this inner compass strengthens, guiding you through each day with calm certainty, you begin noticing that your relationship with time itself has transformed. Time no longer feels like an enemy chasing you, or a resource slipping away too quickly. Instead, it becomes something you collaborate with, something that expands when you're focused and softens when you allow yourself to slow down. You stop obsessing over the hours you have left and start cherishing the quality of the moments you're in. You become more intentional about how you spend your time, because every minute now carries meaning. It's no longer about filling your schedule. It's about honoring your priorities, and with this shift, your sense of pressure fades. You stop rushing through your days just to check boxes. You stop measuring your worth by how much you finish. Instead, you measure your life by alignment, by how authentically your actions match your values. You find yourself becoming more selective, saying yes only to the things that matter, the things that nourish your growth, the things that connect you to your deeper goals. And you say no with grace, no to distractions, no to obligations that drain you, no to expectations that aren't aligned with the person you're becoming. This newfound relationship with time brings a sense of ease you may never have experienced before. You feel yourself slowing down internally even if your outer world is busy. You work with a sense of grounded flow, knowing that you can trust your pace. You're no longer racing against time, you're using it wisely, calmly, intentionally. And that shift changes everything. It gives you space to breathe, to think, to create, to grow. It makes your days feel less like a race and more like a journey, one you're walking with clarity, confidence, and peace. And as your relationship with time softens, you begin discovering something even more profound. You finally have room to think. Real thinking, deep thinking. The kind of thinking that doesn't happen when you're rushing, multitasking, or drowning in noise. For the first time in a long time, your mind has space to breathe. You start connecting dots that were once scattered. Ideas that felt blocked begin to flow. Solutions that once seemed complicated now appear with surprising clarity. This mental spaciousness becomes one of your greatest strengths. It allows you to step back, observe your patterns, understand your emotions, and make decisions from a place of wisdom instead of impulse. And within this spaciousness, creativity awakens. Not the frantic creativity that appears under pressure, but the genuine kind, the creativity that comes from stillness, presence, and emotional balance. You begin imagining possibilities you never noticed before. You start seeing alternatives instead of feeling trapped. Even your routine tasks begin to feel lighter because you bring a fresh, clear mind to them. This clarity doesn't just improve your productivity. It elevates every part of your life. You communicate better. You prioritize better. You solve problems faster. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. This shift also teaches you to value silence, the quiet moments where your mind resets and your heart realigns. Instead of treating silence as a pause between tasks, you begin appreciating it as a powerful tool for focus and clarity. You take short moments throughout your day to pause, breathe, recalibrate. And in those moments, you reconnect with your intention, your energy, your purpose. This simple practice brings you back into alignment again and again. It reminds you that productivity doesn't come from constant motion. It comes from conscious motion. Slowly you realize that your thoughts are no longer scattered. Your mind no longer feels like a crowded room. Instead, your inner world feels organized, spacious, and peaceful, a place where meaningful work can grow without force or frustration. And as this mental spaciousness becomes a familiar part of your life, you begin to notice how it reshapes your confidence. You're no longer second-guessing every move, no longer replaying conversations in your head, no longer questioning whether you're capable enough or fast enough or disciplined enough. Instead, a quiet, steady confidence begins to settle inside you. It's not loud or boastful. It's gentle, rooted, and real. It grows each time you make a conscious choice. It strengthens each time you honor your boundaries. It deepens each time you prioritize what truly matters. And slowly, this confidence becomes the foundation of your decisions, your behavior, and your relationship with yourself. With this confidence, you begin approaching challenges differently. You don't crumble when something unexpected happens. You don't panic when plans shift. You don't lose yourself in stress the way you once did. Instead, you pause. You breathe. You observe. You remind yourself that you are capable of figuring things out because you've already been doing it. This shift changes everything about the way you carry yourself. You become more intentional with your words, more thoughtful with your commitments, more grounded in your responses. Even when you're unsure, you move with curiosity instead of fear. And this newfound confidence brings a sense of emotional maturity. You no longer seek validation for every decision. You stop needing constant reassurance. You stop waiting for someone else to tell you that you're capable or worthy. Instead, you begin validating yourself through your actions, your consistency, and the alignment you bring to your life. You trust your instincts more. You believe in your process more. You understand your strengths more clearly. You embrace your imperfections more gently. This inner shift makes your entire life feel more stable, more peaceful, more authentically yours. And as this self-trust deepens, you begin noticing another shift. Your boundaries become clearer, firmer, and much easier to uphold. Before, you may have said yes out of fear, out of pressure, out of habit, or simply because you didn't want to disappoint anyone. But now, with this grounded confidence growing inside you, your yes becomes intentional, and so does your no. You start protecting your time the way you protect something precious, because now you finally understand that your attention, your focus, your emotional energy are not infinite resources. They are sacred, they are powerful, and they deserve to be guarded with care. This change doesn't make you selfish. It makes you self-respecting. You begin recognizing how your boundaries shape the quality of your work, the quality of your relationships, and the quality of your inner peace. When you say no to what drains you, you create space for what nourishes you. When you decline commitments that don't align with your values, you open the door for opportunities that do. You stop apologizing for needing space, clarity, rest, or simplicity. You stop allowing others to dictate your pace or priorities. You stop bending yourself into shapes that no longer fit the life you are building. And this clarity radiates outward. People begin understanding what you stand for, what you value, and how you choose to live. You communicate more directly, more gently, more honestly. You no longer hide behind excuses. You express your needs with calm confidence. You begin setting boundaries not to push others away, but to protect the version of yourself you are becoming. And as you honor these boundaries, your life starts to feel more aligned, more peaceful, more controlled. You finally see that boundaries are not walls. They are doors. Doors that allow in what strengthens you and gently close to what does not. And as your boundaries become clearer and more natural, you start experiencing something you may not have felt in a very long time, a deep sense of emotional freedom. The kind of freedom that comes not from having less to do, but from having control over what you do and why you do it. You begin waking up each day with a lighter heart, because you're no longer carrying the invisible burden of obligations that were never truly yours. You no longer feel that constant pressure to please everyone, to meet every expectation, to be available at every moment. Instead, you feel a quiet empowerment growing inside you, a freedom born from choosing your life instead of merely responding to it. This emotional freedom softens you. It allows you to breathe more deeply, think more clearly, and move through your day with ease rather than tension. You begin giving yourself permission to rest without guilt, to slow down without fear, to prioritize your peace without apology. And amazingly, this freedom does not make you less productive. It makes you more productive, because now your effort is focused, your energy is protected, your mind is uncluttered. You're no longer pouring yourself into meaningless tasks or obligations that drain you. You're investing your time into things that matter, things that align with your purpose, things that move you forward. And with this freedom, you start reconnecting with parts of yourself you may have forgotten. Your curiosity, your creativity, your sense of wonder. You begin to feel more present in conversations, more engaged in your work, more connected to your goals. You find yourself smiling more, breathing easier, thinking clearer. Life begins to feel less like a race, and more like a journey you are finally enjoying. This emotional freedom becomes the quiet foundation, supporting every step you take toward the life you're creating, a life rooted in intention, clarity, and inner peace. And as this emotional freedom becomes part of your everyday life, you begin to feel a quiet but profound shift in the way you move through the world. You notice that your mind no longer clings to old fears or outdated beliefs that once held you back. Instead, you start trusting your inner voice, that subtle intuition that gently guides you toward what is right for you. You become more present, more aware, more connected to your own needs. You stop reacting impulsively to stress or pressure. You stop letting every little inconvenience derail your focus. You begin responding with patience, intention, and clarity. This inner calm becomes your anchor, helping you stay grounded even when the world around you feels rushed or chaotic. You also start noticing how easily you now make decisions that once overwhelmed you. Choosing your priorities doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels like alignment. You can instantly sense what deserves your energy and what doesn't. You no longer waste time convincing yourself to be someone you're not. Instead, you embrace who you are, understanding that your strengths, your pace, your rhythm have value. This self-acceptance liberates you from comparison. You stop measuring your life against someone else's timeline. You stop questioning whether you're doing enough. You begin realizing that the real measure of progress is not speed, but alignment, not exhaustion, but consistency, not perfection, but growth. And with this realization, your days begin to feel lighter. You move with clarity, speak with intention, rest with courage, and work with a sense of purpose that comes from within. You're no longer surviving your days. You're shaping them, guiding them, owning them, and this ownership becomes the strongest expression of your personal power. And as this sense of ownership deepens, you begin to realize that productivity is no longer something external you strive to achieve. It has become an inner state of harmony. You no longer wake up feeling pulled in a dozen directions. Instead, you begin your day with an inner steadiness, a quiet sense of direction that guides your choices from the moment you open your eyes. You feel a stronger connection to your purpose, a deeper understanding of what truly matters in your life. This clarity becomes your compass. It helps you navigate distractions, manage interruptions, and stay rooted in your priorities even when the world demands otherwise. You stop scattering your attention across unimportant tasks because you can now see which actions move you forward and which ones pull you off your path. With this clarity, you experience something powerful, a level of focus that feels natural, not forced. You dive into your work with presence, not pressure. You move through tasks with flow, not frustration. You embrace challenges with curiosity, not fear. Even your mistakes feel different now. Instead of viewing them as failures, you see them as stepping stones, valuable pieces of information that guide your growth and refine your approach. This mindset transforms how you navigate every part of your day. You no longer freeze when faced with difficult choices. You no longer get stuck in cycles of overthinking. You simply take the next aligned step, trusting that clarity will meet you along the way. And this ease isn't accidental. It's the natural result of the inner work you've been doing, the boundaries you strengthened, the emotional freedom you cultivated, the clarity you embraced. All of it has rebuilt your relationship with yourself. You now operate from a place of alignment, self-respect, and authenticity. And because of that, productivity has become a reflection of who you are, not a burden you carry. You are becoming someone who doesn't just manage their life. You shape it with calm, confidence, and intention. And as this aligned way of living becomes natural to you, you begin to witness another beautiful transformation. Your relationship with challenges shifts completely. Before, challenges felt like roadblocks, things that derailed your momentum and triggered stress or self-doubt. But now something inside you has changed. You no longer see challenges as threats. You see them as information, as signals, as invitations to adjust, to learn, to refine. Instead of tightening up when something goes wrong, you remain steady. You breathe. You observe the situation with clarity instead of panic. You ask yourself what this moment is trying to teach you. And in that pause, that intentional pause, you find your strength. This shift gives you a kind of resilience you may not have recognized before. You become someone who adapts rather than reacts. Someone who responds with awareness instead of emotion. Someone who understands that productivity isn't about avoiding obstacles but navigating them with confidence and grace. You begin trusting your ability to figure things out, even when the path ahead feels uncertain. This trust becomes your armor, not a heavy shield that wears you down, but a light, quiet protection that moves with you. And this resilience doesn't just influence your work, it influences your entire life. You communicate more calmly when conflicts arise. You approach difficult conversations with clarity instead of dread. You stop catastrophizing every setback because you've learned to separate the moment from your identity. A challenge is simply a moment, but who you are in that moment is what truly matters. And now who you are is someone steady, intentional, and grounded. Even the people around you begin to sense this shift. They see the calmness in your eyes, the steadiness in your voice, the maturity in the way you handle complexity. You become a presence that others feel safe around, not because you have all the answers, but because you no longer crumble under pressure. You have learned to face life with an open mind and an anchored heart. And this, more than anything, becomes one of your greatest strengths. And as this inner resilience becomes a steady part of who you are, you begin noticing that your relationship with pressure transforms as well. Pressure used to feel like something heavy sitting on your chest, a weight that pushed you, rushed you, overwhelmed you. But now, with your mind clearer and your emotions more grounded, pressure no longer feels like an enemy. Instead, it becomes a message, a signal telling you something needs attention, something needs space, something needs to be understood. You stop reacting to pressure as if it is a crisis. Instead, you examine it gently. Why am I feeling this? What expectation is attached to this? Is this pressure even mine to carry? And with those questions, the intensity begins to soften. You start recognizing that most pressure comes not from the task itself, but from the meaning you attach to it. The fear of failure, the fear of judgment, the need to prove yourself, or the old habit of thinking you must do everything perfectly. But now, with your new awareness, you begin loosening your grip on these outdated beliefs. You remind yourself that you no longer live by the rules that once exhausted you. You no longer operate from fear. You no longer define your worth by your productivity. And this realization brings a profound lightness into your life. As pressure shifts into understanding, your entire internal landscape changes. You approach deadlines with structure instead of stress. You take action with clarity instead of panic. You prepare with confidence instead of fear. Even when you feel that familiar rise of tension inside you, you no longer let it take over. You breathe. You bring yourself back. You handle the moment from your center instead of your survival instincts. And this, slowly, transforms you into someone unshakable, someone who can navigate intensity without losing themselves. And as this calm mastery over pressure becomes part of your daily life, you begin to discover a deeper truth. That clarity is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. Clarity about your goals, clarity about your energy, clarity about your priorities, clarity about your limitations. For so long you may have lived in a fog of urgency, constantly jumping from one task to another, trying to keep up without ever pausing to ask yourself what actually mattered. But now, with a grounded mind and an aligned heart, clarity becomes your constant companion. It's as if the noise has finally settled, revealing the path that was always meant for you. With this clarity, you no longer confuse movement with progress. You no longer confuse productivity with constant activity. You no longer confuse busyness with purpose. Instead, you make deliberate choices, intentional choices, choices that reflect the person you're becoming, not the person you used to be. And as you make these choices, your life begins to reorganize itself around what is essential. Distractions fall away naturally. Old habits lose their grip. Misaligned commitments quietly fade out of your schedule. And what remains is a life shaped by intention, not obligation. This clarity also brings a new kind of confidence, a directional confidence. You may not know every step ahead, but you know the next step, and that is enough. You move forward with trust instead of fear. You plan with purpose instead of panic. Decisions that once took you days now take minutes because you can instantly sense what aligns with your values and what doesn't. And this alignment, this inner knowing, becomes the invisible force guiding your productivity. It helps you conserve your energy for the things that truly matter. It helps you build momentum without burning out. It helps you stay true to yourself even in a world full of distractions. And as this clarity continues to guide you, you begin noticing something extraordinary. Your life starts to feel simpler, not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because you are no longer fighting against yourself. You've stopped creating unnecessary complications. You've stopped filling your mind with noise. You've stopped chasing things that were never meant for you. Instead, you move with intention, choosing what aligns with your purpose and gracefully releasing what doesn't. This simplicity becomes a source of strength. It gives you space to think, space to breathe, space to grow. You realize that simplicity isn't about having less, it's about carrying less, mentally and emotionally. And as things simplify, your energy flows more freely. You no longer waste precious focus on tasks that drain you. You no longer give emotional space to situations that don't nourish you. You no longer scatter yourself across commitments that don't reflect your values. This creates a quiet power within you, the power of a mind that is no longer burdened by clutter, doubt, or chaos. You begin experiencing your days with more clarity and depth because your mental bandwidth is no longer consumed by unnecessary distractions. This simplicity also deepens your presence. You become more engaged in conversations, more attentive in your work, more connected to yourself in every moment. You start savoring the small things, the calm before starting a task, the satisfaction of completing something meaningful, the peace that comes from a well-organized mind. You realize that productivity is not about intensity. It's about intentionality. It's about focusing your energy where it truly matters so that your actions become more powerful, more effective, and more aligned with who you are. And slowly, this simple, intentional way of living becomes your new normal. Not forced, not rigid, but natural. It unfolds quietly, like a soft transformation from the inside out, shaping your days with a sense of ease you once believed was impossible. And as this simplicity becomes your natural state, you begin to notice how it elevates not only your productivity, but your overall sense of well-being. Your mind feels lighter, your days feel more spacious, even your body feels less tense, as if it's finally allowed to relax after years of carrying unnecessary pressure. You begin waking up with a sense of ease instead of overwhelm. You move through your morning without rushing, without chasing the clock, without feeling like you're already behind before the day even starts. This calm beginning becomes the anchor that steadies the rest of your day. It helps you enter your tasks with clarity instead of chaos, with intention instead of urgency. And as you embrace this new rhythm, you discover something profound. Peace is productive. When your mind is not divided, your work becomes deeper. When you're not overwhelmed, your decisions become wiser. When you're not constantly reacting, you can finally be present. This presence transforms everything. You listen more fully. You think more clearly. You create more thoughtfully. Even simple tasks, writing an email, planning your day, organizing your thoughts, become smoother because you're approaching them with a calm, centered mind. This peace also reconnects you with your sense of purpose. You begin remembering why you started certain goals in the first place. You reconnect with the deeper meaning behind your ambitions, the personal reasons behind your effort. Instead of feeling lost in a cycle of endless tasks, you feel aligned with a direction that truly belongs to you. And that alignment makes your work feel lighter, more purposeful, more meaningful. You find yourself not just completing tasks, but contributing to the life you want to build. Slowly you understand that peace is not the opposite of productivity, it is the foundation of it. When your inner world is calm, your outer world becomes manageable. When your heart is steady, your actions become powerful. And when your mind is clear, your path becomes unmistakably visible. And as this deep inner peace settles into your everyday life, you begin to experience something even more profound. Your actions start aligning effortlessly with your long-term vision. You no longer feel like you're forcing yourself toward your goals. Instead, each step feels guided, intentional, and connected to a bigger purpose. You're not just working anymore. You're building. You're shaping your future with clarity instead of confusion, with confidence instead of hesitation. You begin to realize that your goals are no longer distant destinations you hope to reach someday. They are paths you are already walking with steady, grounded steps. This alignment changes the way you evaluate opportunities. You stop jumping at every possibility simply because it's available. Instead, you choose what aligns with your values, your energy, and your direction. You understand that not everything that looks good is meant for you. Not every door needs to be opened. Not every invitation deserves a yes. And this selective approach doesn't limit you. It protects you. It protects your focus, your energy, and your emotional well-being. It ensures that the work you invest yourself into is work that moves you closer to the life you're intentionally creating. This sense of alignment also brings a new level of satisfaction to your daily life. You no longer wonder if you're wasting time, if you're drifting, if you're falling behind. You feel yourself moving forward, steadily, meaningfully, consciously. Even on days when progress is slow, you know you're still aligned because your actions are rooted in purpose, rather than pressure. And this quiet certainty gives you a strength that stays with you. Even in difficult seasons, you begin trusting your journey, one aligned action at a time. And that trust becomes the invisible force shaping your future with a sense of calm power you never knew you had. And as this trust in your journey strengthens, you begin unlocking an even deeper truth, the realization that you are no longer striving to become someone else. You are finally becoming yourself, not the version shaped by pressure, expectations, or comparison. Not the version who doubted their abilities or questioned every decision, but the version who is grounded, intentional, and deeply connected to their own identity. You begin recognizing that the more you honor your authentic self, the more aligned your life becomes. Your goals feel more meaningful. Your work feels more natural. Your days feel more balanced. You stop trying to fit into systems that don't support you and start designing a life that reflects your unique strengths and rhythms. This authenticity brings a sense of emotional relief, like taking a deep breath after holding it for years. You begin making decisions based not on what others expect, but on what truly feels right for you. You set priorities that reflect your values, not someone else's standards. You shape your time around what nurtures your mind and your goals, not around what drains you. And with every authentic choice you make, you feel more aligned, more grounded, and more in control of your life. You also begin noticing how this authenticity impacts the world around you. Your conversations become more sincere. Your relationships become more meaningful. You stop hiding your needs, your boundaries, and your truth. You show up with more clarity, more presence, more honesty, and people respond to this version of you. They sense the calm confidence you carry, the emotional maturity you've developed, and the intentional life you're building. Authenticity becomes the language of your actions, the foundation of your decisions, and the quiet power behind your growth. And slowly, you begin to understand something truly transformative. The more you become yourself, the easier life becomes. The more aligned your identity is with your actions, the more naturally productivity flows. The more honest you are with yourself, the less friction you experience. This is the real essence of living, not performing, but being. Being aligned, being aware, being grounded, being authentically you. And as this powerful sense of authenticity settles into your life, you begin noticing that your relationship with effort changes as well. You no longer feel the need to push yourself to extremes just to feel productive. You no longer equate exhaustion with accomplishment. Instead, you approach your work with a sense of balance that comes from knowing who you are and what you truly need. Your effort becomes intentional, not forced. Purposeful, not pressured. You begin working with your energy instead of draining it. And the more you honor your internal rhythm, the more sustainable your productivity becomes. This shift allows you to give your best without sacrificing your well-being. And in this space of balanced effort, you start seeing how much more powerful, focused, aligned action is compared to scattered, frantic busyness. 1 hour of intentional work now feels more effective than 3 hours of stressed, distracted attempts. You begin recognizing that the quality of your attention matters far more than the quantity of your time. You show up to each task with clarity, presence, and purpose. Even when challenges arise, you no longer spiral into overwhelm. You pause, recalibrate, and continue with confidence because you trust your process. This balanced approach also deepens your sense of inner stability. You become less reactive, less easily thrown off by unexpected changes. You know how to return to your center. You know how to manage your emotions. You know how to slow down without losing momentum. This emotional grounding becomes one of your greatest strengths, a quiet, consistent force that supports you through every season of your life. You move forward not with urgency but with assurance, not with pressure but with peace. And in this harmony of authenticity, clarity, and balanced effort, You finally feel what it means to live in alignment, to work from your truth, to rest without guilt, and to grow without fear. This is the beginning of a life that doesn't just look productive from the outside, but feels fulfilling on the inside. And as this aligned way of living becomes your natural rhythm, you begin realizing something incredibly liberating. Productivity is no longer a destination you are trying to reach. It has become woven into the fabric of your everyday life. You're no longer chasing systems, hacks, or temporary bursts of motivation. Instead, you're living from a place of clarity and emotional groundedness that guides your actions effortlessly. You've built habits that don't rely on pressure. You've cultivated focus that doesn't require force. You've developed resilience that doesn't collapse under stress. Your work flows more easily now, not because life has become simpler, but because you have become steadier. And in this steadiness, you find yourself becoming more patient with your progress. You understand that meaningful growth takes time, consistency, and compassion. You are no longer trying to sprint your way towards success. Instead, you walk with intention, knowing that every small conscious step adds up. You notice how your perspective has shifted. Where you once felt behind, you now feel aligned. Where you once felt frantic, you now feel calm. Where you once doubted your ability, you now trust your journey. This trust softens your days and strengthens your decisions. You also begin appreciating your own evolution. You see how far you've come not just in productivity, but in emotional maturity, self-awareness, and clarity. You see how your relationships have become healthier, how your decisions have become wiser, how your boundaries have become stronger. You begin living not for the approval of others, but for the alignment of your own heart. And this internal transformation becomes the quiet foundation for everything you create. Your work, your goals, your dreams, your future. You realize that the person you are becoming is not the result of pressure or perfection, but the result of presence, intention, and deep self-understanding. And as you continue living from this place of presence and alignment, you begin experiencing something that feels almost like a quiet awakening, a realization that the life you once thought required constant struggle is now unfolding with surprising ease. Not because every challenge has disappeared, but because you have changed. You've built an inner foundation that doesn't crumble under stress. You've developed a mindset that doesn't collapse into chaos the moment something goes wrong. You've learned to meet difficulty with clarity, to meet pressure with breath, and to meet uncertainty with trust. This inner evolution transforms the way you experience your days, turning what once felt heavy into something manageable, even meaningful. You begin to notice how your emotional responses have matured. Things that once irritated you now barely disturb your peace. Situations that once overwhelmed you now feel like opportunities for growth. You no longer react from fear or insecurity. You respond from awareness. You give yourself time to process, time to reflect, time to communicate with intention instead of impulse. This emotional steadiness becomes your hidden superpower, shaping not only your productivity but also your relationships, your decisions, and your overall sense of well-being. And in this grounded state, you start reconnecting with joy, genuine joy, not the kind tied to accomplishments or checkmarks. You find joy in a calm moment, joy in a clear thought, joy in a task completed with presence, joy in honoring your boundaries, joy in choosing yourself. This joy is subtle, but it's powerful. It fills your life with meaning in the moments between achievements. It reminds you that success is not something you wait to feel later. It's something you can experience in the small, intentional choices you make every day. You realize that this journey has never been about becoming a perfectly productive person. It has always been about becoming a more aligned, more aware, more authentic version of yourself. And in doing so, you've transformed productivity into something deeper, a way of living that honors your mind, your energy, and your truth. And as this deeper joy settles into your life, another quiet realization begins to take shape. You finally understand that productivity is not about constantly doing more. It's about doing what matters. You begin valuing depth over speed, presence over pressure, clarity over chaos. Your work becomes more intentional because you have become more intentional. You're no longer driven by the fear of falling behind. You no longer push yourself into exhaustion just to feel accomplished. Instead, you choose your actions with purpose, and each choice reflects a deeper alignment with the person you are becoming. There's a calm strength in this, a confidence that comes not from how much you do, but from how deeply you understand why you're doing it. And with this shift, even your goals evolve. You stop chasing goals that don't resonate with you, goals that were born from comparison or expectation. Instead, you set goals that reflect your values, your strengths, your passions, goals that excite you, not drain you, Goals that help you grow, not disappear into someone else's definition of success. With each aligned goal, your motivation becomes more natural, your discipline becomes more sustainable, and your progress becomes more meaningful. You're no longer climbing a mountain just to prove you can. You're walking a path that feels like home. This new clarity also changes the way you experience time. You no longer rush toward the future, hoping life will feel better. When you get there, you begin appreciating the present. The small steps, the quiet victories, the gentle lessons. You realize that every day contains moments of progress if you're willing to see them. You begin celebrating consistency instead of perfection. You learn to value rest as much as effort, reflection as much as action. And in this balance, you find a rhythm that supports you instead of draining you. You now understand that a fulfilling life isn't built by force. It's built by alignment, one intentional choice at a time. And as we reach the end of this journey, take a moment to notice the quiet shift within you. The clarity, the calmness, the renewed sense of direction. This book wasn't just about productivity, it was about rediscovering yourself. It was about understanding your mind, respecting your energy, honoring your rhythm, and creating a life that feels aligned with who you truly are. You didn't just listen to ideas. You walked through a transformation. You felt the weight of old expectations lift. You felt the pressure of perfection soften. And somewhere along the way, you started to see that productivity isn't about doing more. It's about becoming more you. So carry this awareness with you. Carry this alignment into tomorrow, into your routines, into your goals, into your moments of doubt. Remember that your worth is not defined by how much you finish, but by how intentionally you choose to live. Remember that rest is part of progress, that clarity is more powerful than speed, and that every small, conscious step brings you closer to the life you're meant to build. Thank you for joining this journey, and before we close, welcome always to Book Navigator, your companion in exploring powerful ideas, life-changing books, and stories that help you grow into the best version of yourself. If this audiobook brought clarity, peace, or inspiration into your day, I invite you to stay connected by joining us for the next journey, the next book, the next transformation. Until then, take a breath, take your time, take care of your mind, and remember, the most meaningful productivity begins within you.